to Business with BISILA BOKOKO, Negocios with BISILA BOKOKO. You could say it in English, you could say it in Spanish. We work in both languages. And here we are today with Jingna Zhang. And I'm super excited because she is a photographer, a fashion and fine arts photographer, but it's much more than that, because just watching her work and her path, I think she has a lot to tell us. And I'm very excited to welcome you today.
Thank you, BISILA. Thank you so much for having me. Very glad to be here.
So tell me, you had a very interesting background, and I would like to know a little bit more about your upbringing.
So I was born in Beijing, China's national shooting range, and I went to Singapore with my mother when I was quite young, and I grew up there. So when I was in Singapore, I picked up air rifle shooting in secondary school, and I pursued that, played a little bit of rock band, and became kind of interested in costume and design. So I decided to go to art school, even though I wanted to go to the Olympics. So I figured that would give me time, to pursue art instead of like a really structured, traditional academic career. And after 6 years on the national team for shooting, I decided to pursue photography full-time eventually. And that ended up being the majority of my career, not all of it. Since then, so over 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jingna, fashion and fine photography, you combine it with fantasy and painting. What took you to that journey? I mean, because photography is a very vast universe, but you have a very peculiar style.
Yes. So I always had an interest in art, in older paintings and Japanese fantasy art, because the fantastical makes you kind of dream and it takes you to a different place. It's imagination, right? And I adore the beauty of Pre-Raphaelite paintings. It's a little bit sad, emotive, but wraps a story in it. So when I first started photography, this was before Facebook existed. It was on a website called DeviantArt. So that was, I think, the first major social media platform. And most people were posting work like anime illustrations or like game concept art. And maybe I'm a little bit rebellious. I like to be contrarian. I thought it would be really interesting if I took photos and made people stop when they look at my work and think, is this a photograph or is this a painting? So I think that was really when it first started. And I would go from like each photo shoot, try to just choose only one picture and really restrict and force myself. So the value of an image, further brings people to think that this could be a painting. And just from there, yeah, I started.
Yeah, so exciting. And you have among your clients Lancome, Mercedes Benz, and what kind of services exactly you have been doing for them on any other clients?
So even though primarily we are known as, I'm known as a photographer and you're known as a host, we have much more work behind the scenes. So for me, depending on the client, with a major client like Mercedes Benz and Lancome, we work with an advertising agency, for example, like Ogilvy and Publicis, and they have a very perfect, exact art direction and mood. And we basically execute for them on set. And sometimes we do the model casting as well. And after that, we look through post-production and make sure, everything comes out perfectly based on how the ad agency and the client wants it. For later on in my career, when I work with direct clients and they come to us for art direction, sometimes we work on that either together with the brand's creative director, or we just propose. It depends on how much the client really wants to give us the room, right? Because if you tell a creative you can do anything, then they don't really know what they're getting, but you're really buying into their artistic vision. So there is a range, and we can prepare a project and work on it for anywhere between 2 to 4 months, from when we start concepting to doing the pre-production, coming together and looking for the set, the props, and everybody involved onto post-production.
Wonderful. What are the struggles of an artist? In one of your tweets, you mentioned that the life of an artist seems to be carefree, but it's not. And also you are now like see motion. So I would like to know why.
Yes. So obviously for an artist, at least for me, I think, and many people I know, there's a lot of internal conflicts and struggles all the time. Should I be more artistic and just showcase myself and my expression, or should I be more commercial and make money? Right,
Yes.
right, and especially if you can, and that also drives your fine art work. So there's always a push and pull, and it doesn't matter if you have very good friends or very good mentors. That's an internal thing that we all have to make decisions for ourselves where we want to stand on the scale. And for me, I think maybe growing up in Asian household, you know, a very traditional East Asian culture, I am extremely critical of myself, and I don't think there's anybody in the world who hates my work more than I do. Like I am proud of being very good at it, but I also just, I can always see so many flaws. Why didn't I do this better? And why am I not improving fast enough? So there's a lot of that very strong struggles. Z Emotion actually came from a Japanese anime I liked, Gundam Wing. And for me, it stood for zero emotion. Basically, I thought if I was less emotional, you know, I thought about these things less, it might make my life a bit easier. But yeah, it's a work in progress. And I'm also grateful that I am emotional, because I think that makes my work expressive. So
I have a good friend in Barcelona who is a psychologist, and she said that 21st century is the revolution of the emotions too. And it's because for the first time we are able to embrace them and talk about them, right? So I think that makes you brave. And I was so proud because I believe that through the time, artists always hide emotions in the art, but the fact that you also are able to speak about it, I think it just gives an outlook about, you know, things are changing. So I totally hope that you continue to be emotional and you embrace that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And tell me that about refill suiting. That's very interesting, you know, because I mean, I would like to know that a little bit more about that part of you. And if it have some impact in your journey as an artist.
So I really only picked up rifle shooting because my mother was a coach, and it's just a little bit like, oh, why don't you give it a try? But I am very competitive. So once I started, I loved it, and I turned out to be a little bit good at it. So in the first 9 months since I started, I broke the national record in Singapore, and then I joined the national team. So that allowed me to see the world a lot as a teenager when I was 14, 15 years old, compared to a regular teenager. And over all these years, I think one thing that's really important in shooting is breathing, right? Because there's no way our body can stay perfectly still to look at a target all the time. So you learn to go with the rhythm of your body and the tempo of how things move to get the perfect shot for the bullseye. And I feel that sense of rhythm translates really well to photography, because models are moving and there's a rhythm and tempo to the way our body structure itself, and you know, like from one pose to the next. And I think that kind of teaches me and how to focus on the flow of like fabric, or like, you know, the wisp of a hair in the wind, and that kind of helps with photography, is what I like to think.
That's great. Well, you mentioned something when we were talking about emotions, about the struggle between the commercial and the artist.
Yeah.
You consider yourself a good businesswoman besides an artist?
I would say above average for a freelance artist. I think so. It's kind of interesting because I am the kind of person who like to work on anything I'm interested in. So I used to play a video game called StarCraft 2, and I ended up founding an esports team when esports was still quite young. And you know, when I became interested in artist platform, I decided to, you know, kind of build my own startup and make a platform for artists. Like, I like to pursue these things. And when I was much younger in China, I had this impression that if someone called me business savvy, it's not a good thing because it means I'm not an artist. But obviously, now that I'm much older, I realize it's always a compliment. And I think understanding it intuitively or learning about business is so important for an artist, because there are so many good artists out there who they don't know publicity, they don't know how to manage a client well, they don't know how to price themselves right. But to have a long-lasting and successful career is really important. I think to have a sense of good business. Yes.
Totally. What changes have you seen in the fashion photography world? Because it has been changing.
Yes. I think thanks to social media, actually, there's a broader expectation and standards set for beauty that, you know, what is accepted as beautiful has completely changed in the last 5-10 years. And I think that is such a great thing. And because of social media, people are much more open, they're much more vocal, and the audience has become much more sophisticated and aware, you know, about what materials goes into their clothing, their beauty products. And people talking about these things, it drives change, right? From the top end of the business to the design, to operations, to logistics, to sourcing, to even work conditions. I think there is definitely a lot more to be done, but it's definitely come a very, very long way. And I think that's really thanks to the digital age and social media.
And Jingna, where are you now? And what's next for you?
So I'm living in Seattle now. I was based in New York for 10 years before that. So 2 years ago, I moved here for a sabbatical. And over lockdown, I started working on research. So now I'm working on a new photo book that's inspired by Japanese fantasy art and pop culture. So this is work for the fine art side of me. And that will be my main project for the next 2 years, since we're in production for that.
Wonderful.
And we'll see how that translates to commercial things in the future. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you will, because I'm thinking that you're a very determined person. So what advice you will give to the young people who might be looking at this interview and they would love to live their lives like you did, like you are doing it, just pursuing a dream and do what you love and be able to live from what you do?
So I think that, you know, all my time growing up, to a lot of people, they always say things like, I am so brave and I'm such a risk taker. I apologize about that.
No problem. Life happens.
Yeah. So, you know, people are always saying I'm a risk taker, and I believe I am, but at the same time, it's calculated with, you know, what people don't talk about is I think about backup plans and I think about what I'm okay with. I dropped out of school twice, you know, really prestigious secondary school, you know, and art school the second time. And I'm okay if photography failed, because I know, okay, I will, you know, study in my own time to, you know, go for the SATs or, you know, go back to university, or I will go work at like a grocery store or McDonald's to feed myself. Like, you have to think about backup plans, not just charging into it with nothing. And you need to have a basis for why you are going into something, right? When I quit school, I was getting job inquiries and I was already having interest. So it's, you know, in business sense, is knowing your product market fit, right? You understand there's something going for you. So I believe risk taking is right. You know, if you have a basis for believing in it, and not just a sense of, you know, uncertainty, or I think that would be cool. So I think there's always a balance. And then once you have that, my advice is pursue it relentlessly. And that failure is always okay, so long as you reflect and learn from it. Because I think at every journey, whatever it is, it always feeds back into our long-term growth and shapes us into who we are.
Beautiful. I think that is such a beautiful way to finish this wonderful interview. Thank you so much for your input, your ideas. And I think the sense of everything is possible, but you need to work and be consistent and have a passion for it. And also disattach from the possibility of failure as a failure. I mean, it's just part of the journey, right?
It happens, part of the job.
So thank you so much. We wish you the best in your new path. And we would love to see this book. Let us know when it's finished, okay?
I will. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.